Hey guys, my name is Jemmy, and today we are going to be looking at the next dungeon, which is the 1000 Maws of Toto. You will gain access into this dungeon upon reaching level 23 and keeping up with the main story questline, and you'll be level synced out up until level 25. So this dungeon is from the levels of 23 to 25. If you are over that 25 mark, again, you will be synced down to the level cap of 25. So keep in mind, if you are using any skills that you have learned after the level of 25, once you sync down, you will no longer be able to use those skills within the dungeon. So you might want to switch them out into skills that you could use. So skills that are under level 25, or I think at 25 is okay as well. Now the type of mobs that you will encounter within this dungeon of 1000 Maws of Toto would be the bat looking things. It's called prison Turox. Pterox. Man, people name these things so difficult that I can never pronounce them. And I feel so awkward when I try to pronounce them. It's horrible. There's those, and there's also the Muntui saplings. There's some globs, and there's also some dermites that we have here. So we will encounter them as we go through the dungeon. And I'll just point them out to you as they come. So one of the main objectives of this dungeon is that it's kind of like a maze. You have to go through and you have to get something called a photo cell. Now, photo cells could just be out in the open where you could collect, obviously, after you beat or defeat a couple of mobs that are in the way, like that. So, a Magitech photo cell, you'll be able to collect it. And you need 4 photo cells per portal that you want to open. And you'll meet these portals in a little bit. Keep in mind, as you're going through this maze, there's portions where webs will come out, and you will actually have to destroy the webs. So it's kind of cool. Kind of divides your team and makes you regroup if you are divided. If not, then you could just simply proceed through with them. Oh, and I think I said dermites. I meant, mites. So they're the smaller version of that. Dermites, I think, are the big ones, which you'll see later on. But there's also, these small little mites here. Is it just me, or do they kind of look cute in a way? They look so furry that you want to keep them as a pet, even though that it's kind of like a spider. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, so there are some spider kind of mobs in here that you will have to defeat. Of course, what kind of dungeon would it be without some treasure coffers in the way? So there's a couple in this dungeon. So you just kind of have to work your way around the maze in order to make sure that you don't miss any photo cells, which we've just collected another one, and you don't miss any of the treasure coffers. And there's another one to the right there as well. Oh, yeah, and there's these mobs as well, the gnats. I like to call them gnats because they kind of look like them, or big giant mosquitoes. But apparently they're called tainted Louse? My goodness. So frustrating. But yes. Now there are a couple of mobs here. So these mobs come in a pack of 3. Now if your group gets overwhelmed by these mobs and you can't handle them all at the same time, like your tank just can't outlive them, then the best thing for you to do is that if you have a thaumaturg in your group, or anyone who has the magic casting of sleep, you could definitely sleep some of those mobs nearby so that you don't have to deal with all 3 at the same time. You could pick out ones at a time so that no one dies, and your healer is not straining to heal the entire party as well. Oh, since that thing just popped up, as you see here, I really didn't focus on, I just wanted to get through this dungeon, but so I didn't focus on healing or repairing, sorry, I said healing, I meant repairing any of my gear. And so all of my gear is basically at 0%, meaning that they are basically useless. Now the thing about this game is that it doesn't unequip your gear, or it doesn't, take it off, meaning leaving you naked. It still has it on there, but you basically do very much like significant damage, like significant decrease in damage. You don't do as much as you should be doing. And you'll see that like I'm popping up like 11 while everyone else is almost at like 30 to 85. I'm bringing out like 12 right there, you saw. So it's pretty bad. So if you go into the dungeons, you might want to repair all your gear just to make sure that you are doing the max amount of damage possible. So since we only have one mob here and it is just one central mob, I'm trying to use my limit breaker, but I kept on getting interrupted. Now that's something that happens, if the boss attacks you or if you're trying to move out of the way of something. So you kind of have to be stationary when you use that limit breaker, such as, if you are casting something. So keep that in mind if you are going to be using your limit breaker, that you might want to have topped off life just to make sure that you don't die trying to use that limit breaker. Also, this is the thing I was talking about that uses the photo cells. It's called the Magitech Terminal. So once you go to one of these Magitech Terminals, a boss like that will come out. And after you defeat the boss, you'll be able to use that terminal. And it will use up 4 photo cells. So after you use up those 4 photo cells to open up that terminal, it'll unlock a certain corridor to proceed through the maze. But you make sure that you want to circle around, take the north path first so that you don't miss any photo cells that were left over in that area. Because if you proceed through the corridor that was unlocked, then you're just going to have to basically go back and circle around so that you could get the photo cells that you missed here. So make sure that you collect the photo cells through the north path first and then just backtrack back. Also, of course, if you're not noticing, I am kind of just skipping through some of the content. Nothing important. It's just some of the mob fights because they're just so long and I don't think that you want to be sitting here for an hour. So yeah, so keep in mind that I'm just cutting down some of the mob fights. I'm not cutting out any of the boss fights or anything like that. So once you get those photo cells that were in that north path, just backtrack, like I said, back to the terminal and then proceed through the hall which unlocked for you. And these are the first set of mobs that you're going to reach in that area. Now, if you saw here, when one of these whips died, the warden's whips, the photo cell actually came from the whip's body. So once you get to the first terminal, after that point, there is a possibility that photo cells might come out from the mob's body itself. So make sure that you don't miss any of these mobs just for that extra experience points, extra money, and the possibility of not missing a photo cell. Oh yeah, the goops right there. It's so funny because it looks like a ghost, but they call it a pudding. I guess it kind of, in a way, it is called, it kind of looks like a pudding. I know. It kind of seems more like jello to me. In a way. Less translucent jello. Oh, and those puddings come in different colors too, and the colors depict on what kind of element they draw from. So the green one, I think he draws from like poison, so it puts a lot of dots on you. But yeah. So I guess I'll just go through party makeup for this group. For this group, we obviously use a duty finder, so we have the 1 tank, 2 DPS, 1 healer party makeup, where I'm, obviously a DPS. We have a healer, which is a conjurer, and then our tank is actually this time a marauder. And the other DPS is a lancer. I would like to say that lancers do actually a lot of sorry, I was about to say dragon damage. I meant they do a lot of damage. They do have a fairly good amount of, kind of conal damage as well as, single target damage. Pugilist is very much more so single target. You really only can hit one thing at a time. There is one certain move that I've seen that does just AoE damage, but the radius is very small. And the other attack that I've seen for Pugilist was, not really conus damage, but more like straight line damage. So anything, any mobs that are like right behind each other in that particular line, then they'll take damage that way. But besides those two skills, I mean, Pugilist is very much like single target. Lancer has a little bit more of a conal kind of single target mixture, more so like that. But keep in mind that you can take other skills from other classes and equip them to your bar, so you don't just have to stick with Pugilist skills. But I'm just talking in general about the skills that you learn as a Pugilist and the skills that you learn as a Lancer. Of course, you can mix and match them as you learn through them, but keep in mind that in the dungeon, you could only use the skills that are learned up until that level. So you can only use skills that are 25 or under. Judging the tank, I mean, he's doing a very great job. He's pulling mobs off of the healer, making sure to get all of the mobs he needs before he goes into actually doing damage. So that's great. The Lancer is doing a very, very great job in the case where if there is a stray mob that heads over to the healer, to get that one first off the healer. Healer's doing a great job healing, making sure everyone's alive. No one actually died, so that's great. That's a good thing when a healer doesn't die. Obviously for me, because of all of my gear's damage, I'm doing crappy DPS. But for the sake of the video, I'm just mustering through it so that I could get this content out for you guys, instead of, just going back and being like, hey, can I go repair, and, wasting everyone's time. And while we're defeating these mobs and just working our way through the tunnels, I guess I'll talk about the top left screen. So we have our limit breaker bar. And of course, our limit breaker is important. You start getting a limit breaker bar when you have a party of 4. And that's great so that you could use, a limit breaker attack. Now these limit breakers I'll discuss in a different video when I get to it, so keep an eye out for that definitely. But the thing also I want to talk about is basically the strength of wit and mind that is right underneath that. Now those are kind of additional buffs that you get for just being in that party. Now that depends on how your party is made up of. So you get the wit, I believe, from your tank, you get the mind from your healer, and you get strength from your DPS classes. So that's in just a party of 4. Obviously later on, when you are in a party of 8, then there's more possibility of you unlocking those additional buffs for your party, because there's different tiers of groups. So this is called a light party, equivalent of 4. And when you get to an 8, it's called something different. And I believe there's actually groups of like 16 and such. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, and I'm really, really excited to see later on the expansions on how many people they need to just defeat like a mob or something like that. If it's anything like Final Fantasy 11, as I've heard, then it will be very interesting to see. I've heard that, you know, like NMs were gigantic. It is, you're like hitting at it like a toothpick or something. So I'm really, really excited to see all of that. So back to the dungeon at hand, we have arrived to our second terminal, so the Magitech terminal here. And of course, when you get near it, you activate the second little mini boss here. And once you defeat that mini boss, you'll be able to activate the terminal using 4 photocells. Oh, and also keep in mind that when you defeat the mini bosses, that there will be treasure coffers that come out, so you could get possible loot from them. It's at random, so you can need greed or pass depending on what your group deems are the rules. And after that, you'll work your way down a corridor here. Those green things, or the green puddles that are on the ground, basically put slow on you. So if you want to just get out of them, that's probably the best thing to do. It just slows down your speed, like your running speed. But it doesn't really do any damage to you, it just hinders you. There are things called flesh pods that you'll see, and I'll point out. Now those flesh pods, if you get near them, they will actually burst and put a poison dot on you after doing an additional damage as well. Now these flesh pods can be destroyed by, you know, a single blow. Usually the best thing to do for these flesh pods is for a class or a person who has ranged attacks to attack ranged, so that no one gets that poison dot on them. Obviously, as a pugilist, since all of mine are very close range melee, if I would hit that flesh pod, obviously I would take that damage and have a dot on me as well. And keep in mind that these flesh pods are important because later on in the last dungeon room, they do play a part. The elements are always fun to attack because once they die, they give you shards, actually. Of course, with experience and gil, such as any other mob would, but they actually have a chance of dropping shards of like element shards, like wind shards and such. Now, these shards could be used for crafting. So it's really good to have them on hand because you use so much of them. Now these craftings could be from anything as like carpenter or culinarian or blacksmith, weaponsmith, armorsmith, goldsmith. Oh, so many smiths. But yeah, all these things could make stuff for you to equip, such as your weapon, your armor, furniture that you can make to put inside your house to, you know, make your house look pretty. So yeah. So continue working your way down the corridor. And there's another lightning spirit right there. Well, not spirit, sprite is what they call it here. Oh, did you just hear that jingle? That ding. So that is to let you know that your limit breaker is activated or ready for you to use. So whenever you hear that noise, just look up top to make sure that your limit breaker is full and you're not hearing something else. And that way that you know when the next mini boss is coming, that you have that ready for you to use or not use at your discretion, of course. So here is the last boss room. Very disgusting. Might want to call the Orkin man. Sorry, if you're, I don't know, if Orkin, is it worldwide? I'm not really quite sure. Orkin is a pest control company in the US. But yeah, I don't know why that happened just twice. Sorry. It's supposed to only happen once. But yes, as you see on the outer side of the ring or the room, you do see like a line of flesh pods. Now that's there because if you run around too much on the outside, then you're going to activate all of them and you'll get a massive dot on you. So yeah, the last boss is another hard name to pronounce. Grapheus is what I want to say. Basically, it's kind of like a mixture between a spider. Well, I guess it's kind of like a scorpion in a way with antlers. So of course, as a last boss room, you do have 2 limit breaker bars. The purpose of having 2 limit breaker bars is so that when your bars have 2 that are full and you use a, whether it been from a healer or a tank or a DPS, it would be stronger than just using 1 bar. Now, unfortunately, our DPS deemed that it was better just to use 1 right now. So our actual full bar is no longer full. So we have to, continue attacking to try to build up another limit breaker. During that time, you do see a lot of great teamwork going on. There are additional ads that come out. And if you see here, Grapheus' tail activates. Now you could either decide to target the tail because it is a different target and basically cut off its tail, which is doing that whole venom thing going on. Those green area that you see right there, if you're stepping inside it, then you'll actually have a poison on you. So you might want to step away from that area. And especially if you're the tank, you want to lure your boss or mob away from that green area so that the rest of the DPS and healers could do their attack and as well as stay alive and not take additional damage, unnecessary damage. So yeah, right there, if you see, the group right now is pretty good because once additional ads come out, the other DPS and I are focusing on the other ads, burning them down and definitely keeping them away from the healer, who is trying his best to keep the group alive from all these dots. Oh, and there are occasional flesh pods that come inside. So if you see on the bottom right hand corner, you see a flesh pod right there. So remember to watch around for your surroundings just to make sure that you don't activate those flesh pods and get an additional dot on you as well. But yeah, so it's really at your group's discretion if they want to take out the tail or not. For us, it was just easier to just go after the main body, so Grapheus himself rather than his tail, and just work through the venom that it puts down. So unfortunately our tank didn't live long enough, but we were able to muster out that additional damage needed to take him down. So the bug has been squashed. And that is the end of 1000 Maws of Toto. You have duty complete, and at the time, of course, you would get another treasure coffer with possibly good gear because they are at random and you'll be able to roll on them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that. I will see you guys later. Bye bye.